A good friend of mine messaged the other day. She said she needed a shelving unit to display her products in our local out-of-hand store for their new mushroom producing business. I said I could help. Hi folks, I'm Dan, and this is Therapy Woodworks, my funky little woodworking shop. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff. I appreciate it very much. I wanted to create something slightly industrial, but something that incorporated some live edge wood, because I like live edge wood. We needed the shelving unit fairly quickly, and I didn't have time to source any live edge product locally, so I decided to make some. I created what I call a faux live edge, just using some standard construction lumber out of the lumber yard. I cut some 2x8s on the miter saw to a desired length. And then I faced my stacko boards on the jointer. I made sure the jointer fence was in perfect alignment before I jointed one of the edges on each piece of the stack of boards. My DeWalt planer made short work of my stack of boards, bringing them all to the same thickness. The final step in the milling process was on the table saw, where I bucked off the final edge of the lumber to get me to a consistent S4S, or square four sides. Seems a shame that lumber producer went to all the length to round off all the edges, only for me to square it up again. I needed some backing on the shelves, so I decided to cut two pieces in half to use as the backing on the four shelves. Yeah, it took me a while, but 2 divided by 2 is definitely 4. I use my handy dandy center point ruler so I don't have to do the math, and do a silly thing like try and divide 3/16 by 12/16 or some 16ths like that. So here the fun begins. Let me show you what I meant by creating faux live edge. I made use of my ArborTech power carving tool to grind away the edge of the material until it looked something vaguely resembling what I would consider a live edge of a board. So I tried to make it look like a live edge after you remove the bark. You can vary the cut to make it as smooth or as rough as you want. I used a Festool Rotex sander to kind of smooth out the faux live edge that I created with the ArborTech rough cutter. I added an aesthetically pleasing roundover on the backs using the bandsaw. I just drew on what I thought would look good and then took it to the bandsaw and cut it off. Sanded it smooth on the disc sander. I needed shelves that were close to the 13-inch capacity of my planer, so I glued a bunch of the processed wood together so I could practice cutting it apart again so it would fit in my planer. I wanted to create an aesthetically pleasing curving edge on the shelves, so I measured a couple of spots, pounded in some nails, and bent my expensive ruler to achieve a pretty good arc. The wood looked pretty pleased too, that it was going to become an aesthetically pleasing arc. So I took it over to the bandsaw and sanded it up, and it looked just wonderful. I gave the front edge of the shelves the same faux look live edge that I did on the backs. Again, using the ArborTech cutter and the Rotex sander. So this is the start of the introduction of the industrial aspect of the shelving unit. Black iron piping seems to be in vogue these days, so I thought I could incorporate some into the legs of the unit. I carefully located and drilled holes to accommodate the piping in the bases of the shelving, making sure they would all lined up well by stacking the shelves and marking them from the previous shelf before completing the drilling with the spade bit. I was careful not to tear out the bottom of the shelves, allowing only the point of the spade bit to penetrate through the wood. That way I can turn the wood over and complete the cut without creating huge tear out that spade bits tend to do. The oscillating drum sander was very handy in tidying up the drill hole bits and bringing the holes to a final size that would accept the pipe securely, but not too securely. The final cosmetic touch was to round over the edges on the shelving unit using a 1/4 inch roundover bit on the router table. Onto the black pipe legs of the stand. Black iron in its raw form is, well, kind of ugly, so I like to dress it up a little by cleaning the pipe and completely sanding it clean of that crappy black paint with 80 grit paper on the random orbital setting of the sander. This leaves what I consider a funky scratch pattern that I've used in many of my metal projects. I'm not going to merely rely on a friction fit to support the shelves on the piping legs. I'll be welding washers with holes drilled in them onto the legs to act as an attachment point for the shelving units. On each of the 4 legs, I carefully positioned the washers using welding magnets so I could set about tack welding the washers in place. Then removing the magnets to complete the full welds. Once one set of washers were in place, I could tap the shelf into place and install screws to attach the shelves. I turned the unit upside down so I could go about welding in the next set of washers for the next shelf. And the last of the 4 shelves gets knocked into place. I like to remove the slag from the welds. It's that blue bit that remains after welding mild steel. So I just used a very small sandblaster to clean up the welds, and they look very beautiful when they're all done, even though my welds aren't that beautiful. The final step in the assembly process is to attach the backs of the shelves. A little glue, clamping, drilling, and countersinking before I drive the screws in to complete the process. For final finishing, I wet the wood to pop the grain, then hand sand it with 400 grit. I need a finish that would adhere equally as well to the wood and the metal. I use a clear lacquer as that works well on the wood, giving it a bit of a shine, but it works equally well on the metal pipe, still allowing that funky random orbital scratch pattern to remain visible. As this unit will be indoors, it will protect the iron from rusting well enough. Make sure you spray in a well-ventilated area. I do most of my spraying outside. I prefer to keep my brain cells. Yes, those are my legs, and I'm not riding a chicken like my wife says it looks like. I'm glad she still loves me, chicken legs and all. And there you have it, a spiffy faux live edge display unit all set up with yummy mushrooms on board. Oh, Lexi, you crack me up. What master chef would use an old McDonald's delivery trailer to create his mushroom empire? Don't! Don't! Jeebus. Don't.